everybody, welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It's Francis, and with me today is Sarah from the It Came from the Sea podcast, podcasts about oceans and the things that live inside of them. Sarah, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I was actually at the beach earlier and have not showered, so I'm currently covered in ocean, which seems appropriate.
It is very good then that I am nowhere near an ocean, therefore I can't smell you, I guess. Though I'm near rivers. How do you feel about rivers?
Oh, I do have a thing where I don't really trust fresh water, which
what,
sounds like a bit, but I'm dead serious.
what about freshwater seems squirrely to you?
There's this so like ugh, there's too many things that live in freshwater that
What?
can like because like parasites, right? So like parasites and viruses, bacteria, those all exist in the ocean, but because they have to be able to exist in like a really salty environment, they can't exist inside a human body, so they just die. If you drink in a bunch of ocean water and it's got bacteria in it, most of the time it just like the cells burst and it dies and it's fine. But there's actual brain-eating amoebas that live in freshwater.
That is true. That's why I don't do lakes. I like rivers because the water is moving,
That's
and
fair.
my assumption there is that the amoebas are going too fast for them to go up my nose.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
do
yeah.
not know I don't know the scientific basis behind anything like that. Again, I'm not really a water-based person.
Similarly, I just cover myself fully in lube if I have to go in fresh water because I'm too slippery. Things just roll right past me.
Exactly. But when you try to go noodling for catfish, you're never going to catch one.
Oh God.
See, that's what you're missing out on. You're not if you stay out of the if you stay out of the ocean, you're not going to get all the cool like river fish and everything.
I just like I've never like even as a kid before I really had a lot of experience like in any body of water was never really like interested in freshwater stuff.
So just come.
That's
Well, where did you
it's
grow
my
up? Like you're
bias.
you're in Hawaii now. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Southern Washington, so there's like plenty of fishing to be had. My brothers all like fished. One of my brothers like bought a boat so we could go out and fish on the lakes, but I was just never into it.
But the ocean. Do you go like you said you're in the ocean? Do you go swimming often or?
No, as a kid, we lived. I have 7 siblings, so like trying to fit all of us into a van was a task, and we lived about 2 hours from like Astoria, Oregon. So we didn't really go to the beach very often because it was such a chore to get 10 people into one or two vehicles and then drive
Sure.
2 hours without us all killing each other. Um, and then you're at
Yeah.
the beach in Oregon and it's cold as shit, so you don't really want to go in the water.
I did. My father used to take me up to Lake Michigan, and there were a couple of lake beaches up there. I don't think I don't think I really like touched ocean water until I was an adult, and I
So
was okay
sad.
with that because when I did get into ocean water, I was like, well, this is where all the fish poop and fuck. So
They do that in the
don't
freshwater too, though.
yeah, I don't get in the freshwater either.
All right, that's
Like, I
fair.
mean, look, I
That's the way
live
to do it.
near rivers. I'm comfortable near rivers. I don't go. A river is a fucking death trap. I mean,
Oh
especially the
yeah.
Mississippi. Like,
Oh
ooh, no.
yeah. No, you're
Yeah,
gonna get leeches in that one. I'm not going in there.
no, the Mississippi doesn't have well, you know
Mm,
what? Let me not say anything. Like I don't think where I'm at there's leeches, but also St. Louis is a really big river
you're
of
also
commerce
up.
kind of things.
Yeah, and you're up farther north. I guess I'm thinking of like the Mississippi as it gets closer to the Gulf, and it kind of widens out and gets pretty slow.
Yeah, once it gets all bayou and warm
Yeah.
and sluggish, now up
No,
near me it just grab the undertow grabs you and then you show up in like Tennessee.
that's a different kind of scary.
Yeah, although I tell you, if for whatever reason you're ever in the Midwest, especially around St. Louis,
God help me.
there's a lot of locks and dams that you can that are go up the river from St. Louis up north, and there's a museum. There's like a engineer Corps of Engineer museum that is
Okay.
dedicated to one of the biggest locks and dams. You can go up on the lock. You can watch. Like
Oh yeah. Okay.
last time I was there, they showed us like it's like hang out. One of the barges is going to go through. The river's way down, so it's not going to take very long to do the little thing. So that's fun. Get to
Yeah.
go check out some stuff there.
We used to do that. Washington has a lot of salmon hatcheries that are similar,
Okay.
where you just kind of like show up, and they also have like the water staircases that you can find that are like guiding the salmon back up the river if they need to get there. But a lot of them are built around old or existing locks and dams to try to help the
Mhm.
salmon get around this man-made object. That was always
Yeah,
pretty
the
fun.
Apparently, the fish are really good at using the locks and dams on the Mississippi. They figured it out.
I'm
They
just
just
picturing a bunch of
follow it
fish in
on
like
in there.
business suits going like that's their morning commute, you know?
Yeah, they're got their coffee. They got their clutch of eggs. They're heading
That's right.
upstream.
That's right.
I don't know if we have salmon in the. I know we have
I
like
think so.
paddlefish and needle nose things and big ass nasty catfish. You know, for somebody who lives next to a river too, I cannot stand catfish. Like every river fish tastes like
They don't taste good.
they taste like the river. They taste like mud.
They taste like silt. And
Yeah.
and no, I'm the same way. I like just not into river fish. Some lake fish taste totally fine, but
Yeah,
no.
I think it's the movement. There's a lot of churning of water and everything. Because
Mm.
I've done crawdads that
Yeah, crawdads are
but
fine.
yeah, crawdads are small and in the smaller rivers and everything. But yeah, every catfish I've ever had tastes just like it's just marinated in mud, which I guess technically it is because
Kinda,
it's the
yeah,
Mississippi.
it's a bottom feeder, yeah.
Yeah. So Sarah, I wanted to bring you on because Nate and I have done a lot of making fun of the Navy, and you were in the Navy,
It's correct.
and and we on this podcast believe that representation matters. So we wanted to bring on somebody in the Navy so that we could ask, what the hell's going on with the Navy? Um,
Nothing good.
so we've got Fat Leonard, we've got boats running into boats, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, and the Army is perfect, and we have every problem, but we don't have boats to run into other boats. Actually, I think we do.
Okay, no, you
Actually,
do. You do,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
they're much smaller
Smaller.
boats. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So when they run into each other, it's not that big of a deal. It's like, it's fuck it. We got like 100 of these things.
Probably
You
running
only
into
have
another
like
army boat, like, yeah, fuck it, whatever.
yeah, I mean, look, every Humvee has a dent in it, and if it doesn't have a dent in it from running into either another Humvee or running over some shit, because Humvees are a bitch to drive. They are 10 feet wide. They're
Yeah,
ridiculous.
right. Right, right.
So I expect there to be normal wear and tear when you base the entirety of your let's let 18-year-olds drive these things. Base your military around that.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I kind of expect a few dents and everything. But you told me you've never actually served on a ship.
Yeah, when I was in the Navy, the two times I was on a like active Navy vessel were both for tours that they did because I was intel, and it was basically like take the nerds to work day. And so so I did one on the Port Royal. It was doing sea trials. So the thing with the Port Royal is that like in the mid aughts or the early 2010s, it ran aground outside of Pearl Harbor. It just hit a coral reef that it should have known was there, and then it ripped in a huge gash in the hull.
Hmm.
And they were going to decommission it, but then they decided, no, actually, we don't have the money to replace this with a newer vessel. So just slap something over that gash and call it a day. So when we did that tour, the sailors had been in dry dock for years, being told that they were gonna, it was gonna be decommissioned. Don't worry, the ship's never gonna do anything. And then within the last I think 9 months, they had suddenly been told like, oh, actually no, like actually you're going to sea. So they were pissed. They did
I
not
do got
like
to
us.
say the Navy's really good at reusing stuff. Like I think the battleship, the Missouri, was in active
It was in the
service
Gulf
until
War.
like the mid '90s. Like
Yeah. Well, they took it out of service for a period, I believe, and then in like 1994, 95, they did bring it back for the Gulf War.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
just ridiculous.
right. Like and I don't know what it was about the Gulf War that made everybody just lose their fucking
Oh yeah.
minds. Because they're like, yeah, we need to send 500,000 soldiers over and like pull everything out of mothballs to like just
Right.
kind of swim around. And it's like, where was all that during the next time you guys went in? Because that shit lasted 20 years. So I feel like maybe if we'd had a bit more of a concerted effort at the beginning, we wouldn't have had all this dragging going on in the back
That's
end.
actually how the movie Battleship got made, where they were just trying to push really hard for the Missouri to be brought back out of the museum status.
Right. Like, I mean, that Thunderstruck whole
Oh,
uh,
it's
the montage. It's glorious.
it kind of slaps.
It's got the big Samoan chief. It's got
Yeah.
the dumb white dude. It's got Rihanna. It's got
That's Petty Officer Rihanna. Thank you.
yeah. It's got the main character. What was his rank? He was an officer of some
Honestly.
kind.
Oh yeah, he was like a captain. The movie made no fucking sense. It was really bad. But that
That,
one scene is like, it's a banger. It's out of context. It's kind of great.
that movie is fantastic. I
It's
love
fun.
I love every fucking second of that movie because it's like when we went through the aughts, all the war movies were all just like, oh, it's so sad to be
Yeah.
a soldier, and it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I know because I am a soldier and I am
Yeah.
sad, so I don't need to watch a movie about how sad I am. And then somebody was just like, what if we just made Battleship a movie? And they're like, how are we going to do it? It's like, well, we're going to do a whole lot of coke and we're going to go into this hotel room and we're not going to leave for a week. And
I
they
took
came out.
It
They
feels
came
like they
out
took a trip to like Pearl Harbor and went around the Pearl Harbor Memorial and the Mighty Mo, and that was pretty much it, right? They were just like, oh shit, yeah, yeah, this will work.
and they managed it like a
It is
movie like a movie
far
like
more
that.
coherent than it deserves to be.
A movie like that, like you would think that this is just some cheap B movie, but they actually used the Mighty Mo. They fucking tugged that shit all over the harbor
Oh my
and shot
god,
stuff on it. They dug up a bunch of old decrepit sailors and stuck them all over the place. Like in some ways, this movie is incredibly disrespectful to like everybody who's in it.
no,
But also, I like I said, I unironically love that movie. I love how all the aliens look like they just left like a Limp Bizkit tour.
it's so that several funny stories, I guess, like related to that. So the movie came out, I think, in 2012.
Yes.
Um, I was in a school. I was like in TRADOC. My TRADOC was like 18 months long, so I was there for fucking ever. But it also came out, I think, within a month or two of the Navy. Up to that point, if you were in the Navy, you could not wear your camouflage uniform, your NWUs, off post. Like you could only wear them off post to go like from base to your home. That was it. If somebody saw you in a grocery store on the way home, if they felt like it, they could get you in trouble. It was like real stupid. And
Yeah,
that movie came
the army
out.
pulls that shit sometimes
Oh
too.
yeah. And like so the movie came out though, I think within a month or two of the Navy rescinding that and basically saying like, no, actually you can wear your camis wherever you want. So a bunch of people I was in school with, not me, because I am this kind of like just stuck up sometimes, was everybody I knew went to the movie theater in their uniform to go watch this movie.
Hell yeah.
And yeah, I was just I'm okay not having done that because I'm not going to be in my uniform any longer than I have to be honest.
They're not comfortable.
They're
Like
not
they're
great.
not made for lounging and going to a movie. I just feel like
Oh,
I'm at work. Like I went
right.
to work and the boss said instead of doing a job, we're gonna watch a bad movie. Which would be cool, but I'm still at work, you know.
Still at work. My boots are still like I still have to wear these steel-toed boots that weigh like 5 pounds each, so it's not
At
great.
least you guys don't have. Well, I don't know. The base you were on. Did you ever go to the movie? What base were you stationed on? I guess is
So
the first question I should
that
ask.
was when I was in Monterey, California.
Oh,
But
love
after that,
Monterey.
I was in Pearl Harbor, and so like I
Okay.
did volunteer and like do volunteer work on the Missouri actually, and did get to like kind of wander around inside of it a bit.
Yeah. Go see where all the magic happened of the 2012 movie Battleship. I understand.
Mostly
This
they
is
told
what.
us not to step in the rust spots, but otherwise we'd fall through.
So Sarah, if you didn't, if you weren't on a boat, what were you doing?
I was a linguist. So, like, when I was in school, they were teaching me how to speak Korean. And then I spent the rest of my 6 year enlistment doing various things related to understanding the Korean language.
All right, on. But did you get stationed in Korea at all? Did you ever get to do a tour over there?
Yeah. So I was in Pearl Harbor I was in Hawaii for about 3 years. And then I spent parts of that deployed to Okinawa. And then after that, I spent my last year in Korea, which is to say, I was very spoiled with where I got stationed. And I understand that.
Why Korean?
So the way the language school works is that basically when you show up, you have taken a test to try to like look at your language aptitude, but it's like the ASVAB where, right, it doesn't actually show a whole lot except how good you were at this one particular test.
Right.
And they take that kind of the score you get from it's the D lab. And they kind of decide like, oh, you scored really high, you can go into these more difficult languages, or you scored okay, you can go into like Russian or German, or you scored bad, but you're still here. So I guess we'll put you in Spanish. um,
If there's one thing the U.S. military does not need to train somebody on, we have plenty of Spanish speakers.
yeah, they do, but it's it's funny. The army is actually like, really willing to take a native speaker and just kind of like push a security clearance onto them and say, okay, well, you're a linguist now. So I worked with a bunch of soldiers who had come in infantry or MP or something like that, and then tested, like they were native Korean speakers, took the test, like took the just the language test, and obviously passed because they were native Korean speakers. And then the army was just like, all right, well then you're a Korean linguist now. The other branches will not do that, in large part because it's really hard to get a clearance for somebody whose family is foreign nationals.
Yeah, fair
Yeah.
enough. I don't know how the army manages it other than just
Yeah.
just kind of shoving it through.
I have no idea.
I've been to Monterey a couple of times because we had to when I was going down to Fort Hunter Liggett, which is about an hour and a half south of Monterey. We'd have to fly into San Jose and drive down there. So we'd hit Monterey and we'd always stop in Monterey because I mean it's Monterey. It's fucking beautiful there.
Yeah, it is lovely.
Yeah, it really brings home like that. I was like, all right, I get it. I understand you people in your ocean. I suppose. At least on that side. You go to the East Coast, it's all cold and weird, and I don't
I have been to the
understand it.
East Coast, like I've seen the ocean in the East Coast 2 times, and I gotta say I'm not impressed.
It's like a Massachusetts beach is just like here's a bunch of fist-sized rocks and a guy throwing syringes at you or something. Then you go to Monterey, it's like, oh, this is nice. There's sand. There's still syringes in the sand, but at
Yeah,
least
yeah,
there's
yeah.
sand.
You have to look pretty close to see them, and like the seals are probably chewing on it, so then you get to look at the seal and say, "Oh, that's pretty cute, though."
I hope that seal doesn't get a dependence on something.
All the seals have their shots. They all have their like HEP shots. They'll be okay.
So you chose to be a linguist, and they said, well, Korean's an option, and you went for it.
You show up, and like sometimes you kind of get a say in what you're doing. Other times they just like need to fill slots. When I showed up, I wanted to learn Chinese or Korean. Because honestly, when I was in high school, I was a big weeb. So I was like, well, they won't teach me Japanese. These languages are closer, I guess. I learned that Chinese doesn't have an alphabet and noped out of that one really quick. But Korean does have an alphabet and grammatically is like pretty similar to Japanese, which I'd taken like a year of in high school, which doesn't like count for anything, but I was 18. I was an idiot.
Sure.
And when I showed up, they took all that into account and they said, that's cool. You're going to go learn Iraqi.
Did they say specifically Iraqi? Because that's not a language.
So they used to. So now, if you go to language school now, you will only learn modern standard Arabic. And then when you go to your next command, you will have the option, or you will be told to learn a dialect. Right.
Mm.
When I went through, they were still sorting people into dialects. So if you came through at DLI in like 2011, you could get put into like Arabic, like Iraqi dialect or whatever. That's what I was told I was going to be learning. I had zero interest in it because I just didn't know anything about the region. And again, I was kind of a weeb, so I was like, well, that's not Asia. What am I going to do with that?
Yes, yeah.
Oh yeah,
so,
yeah,
so they
yeah,
could
yeah.
teach you Pashtun and then it would count. Because Afghanistan's Asia, so
Okay, that's not Southeast Asia. Let's like
exactly.
and
You're not into the Afghanistan animation, I guess.
I didn't. I mean, I was sheltered. I was like a sheltered 18-year-old. I got lucky. Essentially, there was a person who just been put into Korean who really wanted an Arabic language, so we were able to switch. Most people don't get to switch. So there were a lot of people there were a lot of soldiers in particular in my Korean classes who had really wanted to learn an Arabic language, really wanted to deploy and like, I don't know.
I mean, it's good money. Like it's because I knew when I went to Afghanistan in 2004, I went to my AIT for public affairs with this Pakistani guy named Haq. HAQ was his last name. And the next time I ran into him, he was a translator, and I was just like, "You're from Pakistan?" He's like, "I know a lot of languages." He wasn't too happy about it because he really liked being public affairs, and now they're just like, no, follow around this general and like tell everybody the pleasantries that they're bullshitting at each other. So he wasn't into that. I do have a cousin though he's Bosnian and speaks a handful of Cyrillic languages. So he was in the National Guard and just like stayed in the National Guard because he made a shit ton of money. Just because he knew he was proficient in like 3 other languages.
Yeah,
the Army's like, we'll give you an extra, $500 a month for all that.
Oh, they like clamped down on that too. When I went through, same, like if you could test into a language and you tested higher than I think the scale goes from a 0 to a 4 essentially, or 0 to a 3 essentially. And if you could test higher than a 2 in your reading and your listening, then you would get money, right? That was like 200 a month, and then every like 2 plus was like another 25 a month. 3 was another like right on top of that. Um, but when I was getting out, they had, which, okay, you learn Korean. There are not dialects of Korean. You cannot take Korean and then try to like fudge your way through a Chinese DLPT. But if you learn Arabic, you kind of can. Sometimes like there are some languages, and if you are kind of like minded for it, you can kind of like half learn a dialect and then test out of it. And you can get, like, my little brother is in now, and he, I think, has tested out of like 3 different Arabic languages. But yeah, like 5-6 years ago, they finally said like, oh, actually, this is really expensive, so we're only going to pay you for the first 2 languages, which meant there were people I knew who were testing out of like 3 to 5 languages, who are making bank, right? Like basically matching their base pay with their language pay. Who like got that cut, like 90% cut, and they were pissed.
Yeah, that's, if we get so much money in the defense bill, but goddamn, does none of it ever come down to a soldier or a sailor at any point in time?
I mean, there were people who were testing out of languages that we just don't have a use for, too, and that was a big part of it.
Yeah. I mean, that, again, like, oh, you're proficient in Spanish. Congratulations. So it's probably like 15% of the military at this point.
Right. And it's like a 6-month training course to teach a Spanish linguist. So it's not the same time investment as like an 18-month course for some of the other languages.
Right. So when did you get out?
I got out of the active Navy in 2017. And then because I am an idiot, I signed up for 2 years in the Ready Reserve. So I did, like, I had to drill, basically. Like, I was doing the 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year for 2 years. And that was worse, honestly.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Because like, it was always so bad when we'd get a new soldier and be like, oh, you came from the active duty. And like,
Oof.
The reserves is pretty like, laissez-faire as it is. But my unit was real dicked up. So I'd always just be like, hey, sorry, come here. Look, you're going to be real pissed off probably your first 6 months here.
Yeah.
I need you to be cool with it, though, because these are reservists. They're not full timers. And like, and also is like, you can see most of these people don't have a combat patch. So don't be too upset about what big dumbasses they are. They all, they all have, big hearts, even if they don't have big brains,
I made E6, I think like 6 months before I got out. So I showed up to my reserve unit as an E6, and they had no way of knowing that I like functionally had not been an E6. I made E6 and I was on a watch floor, so like I didn't do NCO shit. I did just like continue on at the watch floor, and then I just got the first class drama that was going on from like the higher ups. But I showed up, I was an E6, and they needed them. I had just come off of active. I had a really good record because I was just like, I did not enjoy being in the military, but I was very like good at being in the military.
Yes. I fully understand that one.
It made my life easier when I was active to just be good at it. But then when I got to my reserve unit and they immediately went like, oh, you're gonna be in charge now. You're gonna be like the lead enlisted person for this group of kindly dumbasses, which, right, like it wasn't their fault they didn't know what was going on.
Right, you're there 2 days a month. You're not
they got
retaining
other shit going on.
Exactly. Like, yeah. I do remember when I went to my staff sergeant school, one of our small group leader, sergeant first class, like I was the only reservist in the class of about 15 of us. And he's just like, look, we usually have we usually have a handful of reservists in every class, but it's just this time you're the only one.
Right.
And he's like, look, I respect the hell out of the reserves and the National Guard. He's like, because I have one job and it's here, and I do this, and I do this job, and I'm very good at this job. And he's like, and I got, I get a paycheck, I get time off, and I get stipend for his to live off post and everything.
Right, like you have like a housing allowance.
Yeah, and he's like, you guys don't get any of that shit, and you're expected to like still pass a PT test. I don't understand how any of you do it. And I said, well, a lot of us don't, as it turns out.
Yeah, you can't get. Here's the secret: you can't actually get kicked out of the reserves.
It's very hard.
It's very hard.
Very hard. Like, and it depends on the command. It depends on like the person who's in trouble. It depends on what happened. Like
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
seen
yeah.
people get kicked out for weed, and I've seen people not get kicked out for it. So it all just depends on whatever's going on there. But yeah, I'm glad I'm no longer in the reserves. But I had that same thing where it's just like I was competent. I was
Mm.
good at what I did, and like I was public affairs, but my unit had absolutely no use for me to be public affairs.
Right, same.
But I also had a captain who was public affairs who had
Mm.
never done it. Like she was great.
Oh,
She was perfectly fine, normal person. But she's I had deployed before. I'd done this before.
right,
I was here to ride my contract out, basically.
right,
So I gave her like, take all the computers, all the camera equipment. I'll help you out with whatever you need. I can do photo stuff. I can do editing. I can do all this stuff. And that's never anything. We never did anything like that. We take pictures and then put them up on Facebook.
right, yeah.
Um, we're glorified posters at the end of it. But yeah, I was competent, and I was able to do things, and that turned out to work against me because then
Yeah.
the commander was just like, oh shit, Sergeant Horton, come here, can you do this and this? Like, yeah, it's fine, okay, look, it's done. It's like, huh, can you do these other things? And then
Yeah.
suddenly you're just like, why am I the only one fucking doing anything around here?
Oh,
And it's because you're the only one who does anything around there.
I had gotten there when the previous first class had been like well-meaning, but he had done like a 4-year enlistment 8 years ago, and just he was doing that thing that a lot of people do when they've been in for a while, and that like doing it in the reserves was just extra ridiculous, where he just acts
Mm-hmm.
like a gruff old man all the
Mm-hmm.
time. So like people come to ask him questions, and if they ask him like, yeah, it'll be somebody new to the reserves, they literally don't know how to wear their uniform. They don't know how to do their paperwork. In the reserves, like if you're active duty, somebody will do that for you. Somebody will make sure that is done. But in the reserves, right, like you don't have access to a terminal to actually log into things more than a weekend a month. So everybody is doing their admin in 2 days. And he just wouldn't, he would sort of help, but he mostly pulled the like, oh, I gotta go, like, oh, I gotta go sit down. So when I showed up and I was a little bit younger and a little more like, okay, like we just need to have this done because I don't want to get called in a week when I'm not on duty to deal with this. It meant that everybody, right, everybody would come to me. And it did mean that like I would be, you know, in the middle of a class in college and I would be getting calls from people who just didn't know how to do their eval or
Mm-hmm.
like really basic paperwork.
I'm glad to say I never got phone calls, but there was one. We had somebody who rotated in as a first sergeant, and she like we always had we have drill this weekend, so we have on Thursday we had like a team call of
Mhm.
all the officers, a couple NCOs. I was the quote training NCO at the time, which just meant I ran
Yeah.
the PT tests and everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
It's
but
honestly
they
the
always
best collateral to have because it's just very straightforward.
it's really like I I kind of felt I was wasted, but also I
Yeah.
wanted nowhere else to be. It's like I don't want to be here. I would rather go like I passed my PT test. I'm good. So I'm just gonna go out here and like hang out and watch these dudes run around in circles for a while and then
Call it a day.
and enter the stuff into a thing. That's fine. I can do that.
Yeah.
So what are you doing? You got out of the Navy. What are you doing now?
Basically waiting to start grad school at this point. I did so I did an undergraduate in oceanography, which was like I kind of did that program. Like I knew I liked the water. There was another program that I wanted to get into that required a degree in like one of 8 majors, and one of them was oceanography. So I signed up for it basically because like, oh, I like the ocean, like that'll be fun. And then when I got to class, like within the first week, I was like, oh shit, this is like math and shit, like math and junk, right? Like this is science. I'm doing a science degree and I haven't done math since I was 16.
Right,
Um,
you didn't show up, and they pull down like Miss Frizzle shows up with a big poster board that says "Our friend the ocean."
I mean, luckily I had my first actual oceanography class was from a really great teacher who looked like Colonel Sanders mixed with Santa Claus. Uh, and he was great. He was very patient. It was specifically a like pre-term 2-week intensive that was like, let's get you all caught up on the ocean for transfer students, right? Because I have an associate's in Korean, so I wasn't starting as a freshman. And it was one of those things where within the first day they were talking about using like just scientific notation for numbers, and I was like, fuck, like literally had not looked at it in like over 10 years at that point because I stopped doing math. I stopped doing math in high school the minute I could.
Ooh,
I
yeah,
I
I
had
was.
no yeah.
Yeah, senior year, they're like, "So you want to sign up for calculus? Oh, I don't have to? No,
No.
I
No,
will.
no,
I
no.
will. I will take the book reading class, not the math doing class. Thank you."
I did TA sections for like two classes instead of doing like the AP stuff that all of my friends were doing. So um it was it was a good experience. Yeah, like I really obviously like I have a podcast about the ocean basically because I got through the 3 years doing oceanography and realized like, oh, this is if I could learn this and like I thought I was bad at science. I thought I was really bad at math and not that I'm like amazing at it, but just realizing if you have the right teacher and if people are making it approachable and making it so it's not like you don't think somebody's going to call you dumb for not getting it. Um, Actually, science is great. Science can be like really easy to understand in in certain ways. Like you can get what's going on if somebody just takes the time to kind of work with you and meet you at your level.
Yeah, I
And then
feel like math is that I'm not really into math. I can certainly do it, but
yeah.
I got no love for it, so I probably would not have lasted long in oceanography if I was having to chart stuff.
Oh, I think one of the things with learning oceanography is an interesting like it is an interesting science. For me, I think the reason I was able to get through it, even as I was like had to take calculus for the first time, had to take a physics class for the first time, was that when it was just the ocean classes, everything is so concrete. If you're learning about physics, you are learning about it in terms of like a physical, like a thing, like a part of the ocean that you could actually like kind of I could visualize. I could like imagine like, okay, this part of the ocean is heavier because there's more salt in it. Like that makes sense to me.
Hmm.
Where when I did have to take calculus and physics courses, you're learning just like general ways the world works. And it was still really interesting, but because it wasn't attached to a single like concrete this one concept, I would learn it for the week and then it would be right like completely out of my head.
Right. So the mathematics to calculate salt density works better for you if you're like, no, the here's the formula for salt density rather
Yeah,
than here's just a formula that can be plugged and played into a bunch of different places.
right.
I get that. It's got to be
Yeah.
relevant to your interests there.
And it's just like you kind of learn concepts that are always going to be the same. So like my oceanography classes all like really did build on each other by the time you get to your senior classes. You are learning you're using the same concepts, you're learning the same like handful of formulas. So there's a lot more repetition there and a lot more like building on the understanding of one thing rather than trying to like just constantly jam new facts into your head.
So what we've got salt density. What else are you learning in oceanography?
You learn oceanography is kind of split into different sections. So there's like that's physical oceanography, which is physics in the ocean. It's like hydrodynamics, but you do also have to learn a little bit about how heat affects the movement of water. You have chemical oceanography, which will cover things like how much nutrients or how much like metal is being put into the ocean through dust falling out of the sky or through the rivers just like flowing into the water. But it will also look at the concentration of things like oxygen, which is coming from like biological processes. So you are looking at like how much are these fish pooping and peeing? How much
Exactly.
is this
That's
kelp
good.
like breathing out?
It's good information to have.
I think so. And then that also is related to biological oceanography, which is not marine biology for, I don't know, reasons. Mostly, if you're looking at biological oceanography, you're not looking at the kind of the biologic, like the anatomy of a specific creature. So, right, you're not learning about how a fish's gills are set up or like why a fish has organs in this one spot. You're mostly looking at things like plankton and kelp. Um,
And is it kind of just like how all these things like how biology affects the ocean? Because it seems like oceanography is like, no, we're worried about the water
yeah.
and the water here, the water there, what's in the water here, what's in the water there, and just so happens that there is biology in the water, so that's why you're interested in that. But really, it's just about the water.
I think that's a good way to like kind of conceptualize like what their focus is like compared to a marine biologist would look at like well we have this sea creature and we want to know more about like this sea creature's life because it's like this creature. Whereas, yeah, like biological oceanography is going to be more like we know plankton kind of grow in this pattern, and that impacts the water because when there's more plankton growing, there's less oxygen because or there's more oxygen because they're breathing it all out, right? And that will affect, like, okay, if there's more plankton, then there's going to be more fish generally that are going to be eating the plankton. And you are kind of always tying it back to like how do we measure that if we're looking at the water? So if we like pull a sample of water out and we look at the amount of nutrients that are in it, what does that tell us about like the biological processes in the big picture that are going on? Rather than, yeah, like looking at a sturgeon and like the life cycle of a sturgeon.
So why oceanography and not the and not marine biology? Because you talk about a lot of marine biology on your show, right?
I I like I am a marine enthusiast when it comes to marine creatures. I really like whales. I never want to be tested on the anatomy of a whale.
I guess it's kind of like, when you make your hobby your job, it's no longer your hobby. Like the way to really to continue to enjoy the ocean is to just be like, I will learn about these fish as I seem fit and not
Yep.
to be tested on them later.
Yep. When I was in high school, I took and like in high school, a lot of times you just sort of have like you don't have an anatomy class, you just have a like science class that's just called science or called like earth sciences or whatever. Um and I remember in one of those classes in high school, we were learning about like how human muscles work. And we were actually being taught information that I now know is like not true because they were just talking about how like lactic acid buildup is why your muscles hurt when they're sore, and that's like just not the case.
Right.
Um, but essentially, I had one of those moments where like I was learning how the body worked, and then I just sort of started to like picture my own body functioning too hard. It freaked me out. Just
you
like
just
sitting in the middle of a high school class having an existential breakdown. Um, and that was when I knew I never wanted to like actually study biology in any way.
I don't want to know how the body works. I just know that it works and I don't want to
Yep.
have to think too hard about it.
Yep. Pretty
I
much.
get I get that. Sometimes, you hit the vape one too many times and you're
I
just
was
wondering,
like
it's like, what
fully
happened?
sober, but that's kind of how it felt. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. You get you're sitting there and you start thinking about how your heart's beating and how you have
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely
Yeah.
no control over it whatsoever.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Or like you ever think about how heavy your skin is and like, no, I don't need to be doing that all the
Right.
time.
Or how much skin you just like shed, like
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah, yeah.
constantly your body's just like
It's just
discarding.
everywhere.
Yeah, it's horrible. We're disgusting creatures. Can't wait till we can upload our consciousness to the matrix.
Well, Elon's trying, but there's a lot of dead chimps to get through.
So Sarah, you mentioned whales, but what's your favorite marine animal?
Um, so I do have a sleeve, like a tattoo that is like 5 different whales, I think, and then a very large octopus looking creature. That pretty much sums that up essentially. I don't know why, ever since I was a kid, like before I ever thought about studying the ocean or before I ever really had a chance to like go to the ocean very often, just really liked whales and cephalopods. So I
They
don't know.
are.
I don't know what that is.
No, I mean, I get it. They're great. They're gigantic. They're
Huge. They're
gentle.
friendly.
They're not
Yeah.
like, yeah. They're just hanging out, just being giant things that exist. Like
Yeah, it
the
rules.
the biggest things that exist, because if they have to exist in water, because if they're on land, their weight would just crush them. That's weird. They're
They
all
don't get
made up.
cancer.
Do
That's
they
like
get cancer?
no
Oh,
whales. Like whales do not. We've never discovered a whale that has like a tumor, and that's weird.
hmm,
He's like you'd think the way I don't know if it's like oncologists. I know they treat cancer, but whoever like studies cancer, like the way the understanding is like the more cells that you have and the more complicated your cells are, the more likely it is for a tumor to form. Right? It just makes sense statistically.
sure.
And so you would think something like a blue whale, which is like the biggest creature that's ever existed, it's got a lot of cells. It's as complicated as any other mammal, which is very complicated, but they just don't ever get cancer. And that's rules. That's great. I'm so
Well,
happy for them.
good for the whales. How about your favorite non-real ocean creature?
Non-real.
Yeah, like
Hmm.
uh Moby Dick or a kraken, or
No, fuck Moby Dick. I'm so
no,
over
not
that old
not in
hat.
the Moby Dick.
I mean, I don't, I've got a whole thing with that book. I'm just not into it.
Uh,
It's
what
fine if people are, I guess. I just,
what
I,
What's your problem with her? Look, I've never read it.
Oh
I
yeah,
have
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
I've
that
read
would be
excerpts. It's very fancy. It's very fancily written, but like reading books that are like over 100 years old, I can't do that.
it's basically that. When I was when I was a high school pedant, I would try to read like old books so I could feel smarter than everybody else, and then I realized like I just really hate the way Herman Melville and Charles Dickens write.
Yeah, you try to do, it's just it's not even the same language that they're speaking. So what's the but like I said, I read excerpts from Moby Dick and it sounds really good and I do like understand like this does sound really good and then I
Mm.
pick up the physical book and I'm like this is
You
too
can't do
many
that.
pages.
Yeah, you can't read prose, like actual prose, for that long. It's
This
it's
is
too much.
this is a book about a man who hates a fish, all right?
Right.
And
Oh, okay.
like
Well, not a fish. Let's
I
be.
know.
Oh, all right.
and
Well,
and look, there's a lot of symbolism inside of it too, but on its basics, it's this guy really hates this fucking whale and
oh
wants to
yeah.
kill it.
Oh yeah.
And he's
All
gonna get
right.
his peg leg stuck in it somewhere.
I think I like, and this is like very cliche, but it would probably be something like sirens or mermaids, just because everybody kind of like now has this view of them as these like just sexy ladies with a fish body. But also most of the original stories of these creatures were like actually horrifying,
Oh god, yeah.
and
Like
that was like yeah, the
have you
silkies.
ever been to a Ripley's Believe It or Not? I don't know if you have those out in
So
Hawaii.
no, but in Long Beach, Oregon, they at least used to have this thing called Jake the Alligator Boy,
Oh, okay.
which is just the corpse of a teenager sewn
Hmm.
onto the back half of the corpse of an alligator.
That sounds illegal.
It it's one of those things that your parents take you to as a kid, and you're just like, wow, that's creepy. And then as an adult, like I think a few months ago, I had like this flashback to Jake the Alligator Boy, and I was like, wait, that can't be real, right? Like I'm misremembering this thing that my parents just took us to on a whim. But no, it's real, and it is actually a corpse.
Yeah, the Fiji mermaids is what
Yes, yes, yes,
Ripley's
yes.
has. Yeah, I've seen a couple of those. I know the Fiji mermaid's not real, but then they're just like, yeah, we have these shrunken heads, and it's like
It's
I
a
don't.
monkey, I think.
Oh, the
Yeah,
Fiji
the
mermaid.
Fiji one I think is a monkey and a fish, which is pretty fun.
I get. I mean, it's a lot better than like a teenager who's now
Yeah.
on display. What was his name again? Gator Boy.
Jake the Alligator Boy? All my PNW heads
J-
know.
Jake the Alligator Boy or Jake the Alligator Man. I guess
I
I
might
guess
be
now he
Alligator
would be a
Man.
man.
Yeah, he's grown. We had to age him up because it was inappropriate.
Right. Acquired for $750 in 1976. Yeah, that's or 1967.
Just
I
those
don't like that.
fun family memories,
Yeah. The best core memories are the ones that are horrifying. I've found that to be true for everybody.
People ask why I don't talk to my parents anymore.
I talk to my parents because they continue to do it. So that's I enjoy nearly 40 and still getting psychic damage from my parents. I that's the shit that I'm into. So Sarah, what's your podcast about?
So the podcast basically started because I graduated with my bachelor's in 2020. Not a great time to graduate with an undergraduate degree. The job market not good. And then I moved to Hawaii with my like former partner against my will or against my like better judgment, as we all do in our lives at some point. Um, and needed a way to kind of keep up with my friends. And one thing I kind of realized going through the degree was that I really loved learning about ocean science, and I really did not love doing ocean research. So that kind of like started me on the path to like now I'm waiting to go to a master's program for science communication. And in the kind of couple of years in the meantime, the podcast was a way for me to keep up with my friends who were back in Washington State and elsewhere, and then also to basically have an outlet for all of my annoying ocean facts. So it's it's like a
What?
mix of like hard science about the ocean and like kind of answering kind of questions a lot of people have about like how the ocean works, or sharing just like things that I found out through college that I would not have found out otherwise about the ocean. And sometimes I do just relay a bunch of fun fish knowledge because that's as close to marine biology as I ever want to get. I'm dead serious.
Look, my favorite podcasts and Twitter accounts are always, hey, did you know this weird fact?
Yeah, basically.
Which is probably a bad thing to be listening to a lot of lines led by donkeys because the facts are sad. You know,
My facts are often sad. They're often related to climate change.
well,
Yeah.
God damn it, Sarah.
The fish episodes are usually not that sad.
Oh, that's good. We'll we'll,
Yep.
we'll tune in. Go listen to some fish stuff.
That's right.
So Sarah, where can people find you?
I mean, the podcast you can find anywhere that you have podcasts. I haven't heard of a platform yet that doesn't have our feed, and if you find one, let me know, and I'll try to push the RSS feed through there. Other than that, we're on Twitter at It Came From The Sea Pod. Through there, you can find links to our Patreon. We do have a Teespring that I haven't updated in a very long time because everything is work. Everything is a lot of work, and sometimes you just aren't up for it. But there are some designs on there that you can find if you want.
Well, yeah, I got to have you on more, Sarah, because it seems like you and I, like spiritually, are pretty much the same.
The podcast, my episodes come out very infrequently, and I've had a handful of complaints, but it's basically they come out infrequently, and I maintain some amount of like mental like fortitude, or I put them out regularly and I break down. So
yeah, if you put them out regularly, then people expect that, and then they're like, "What the
basically,
fuck? Why are you
yeah,
not
they're
putting
not
your
in
stuff out?"
control. I'm in control.
Right, and that's why I made this a business. And while that's nice because it makes money, it's also
Right,
like there's a lot of times I'm just kind of scrambling to get some content to throw it on.
and that's how I
Not that
ended up
this
here.
is. I don't want anybody to think this is because I've been wanting to get you on to talk Navy stuff for a while. We talked very little Navy stuff. I think we
That's
talked
true.
more
Which is
about the
about
movie.
as much Navy as I experienced while I was enlisted. So
Yeah, it seems like you just kind of hung out and learned Korean for a couple of years and then learned Korean some more.
I did. I like if you ever want to talk about it later. When I was in Okinawa, I wasn't air crew. I didn't go through air crew school, but I did the same exact job as my air crew like counterparts, flying on P3s.
What
So
does
if
that what does that entail?
so like I was on the EP3s, which are old prop planes. They're very loud. They smell like diesel the entire time you're in the air, and you basically have 20 something people on board who are all doing like versions of electronic collections. So a lot of what I did is classified. I did work like directly with the NSA, and they can like if they're mad at me saying that it's not classified, they can
Yeah,
eat
I'm
my
sure.
ass.
I'm sure
Basically.
the NSA listening in right now to my podcast.
Everyone, oh man, if you hang out with a bunch of intel nerds, most military intel, just like for everybody's like situational awareness here, works for the NSA at some point or the entire time.
Right. I
Um,
mean, it's uh, if you join the government to do spy stuff, you're going to do spy stuff with the NSA. It's just going to happen.
basically, I had no idea until after I got out of my A school that was the case. So I was like in the Navy for almost 2 years before I was like, oh, I'm just a contractor for the NSA that's cheaper than a civilian.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Um, yeah. So like we were basically doing like stuff I can't get into too much detail about, but on the back of a plane.
Well, that sounds fun. I mean, it's not a boat, but it's something.
It's
You're over the ocean, I imagine, flying over the ocean
I
at some
was,
point.
yeah.
There you
Um,
go.
I worked with a guy who had been on submarines before he came to the plane, and the way he described it was, one's a fart tube underwater and one's a fart tube in the air, and like, yeah,
That was he normal? I've never met a normal submariner.
that's a loaded question. He was
Yeah.
I really liked him. We were
Okay.
really
Well,
good
that's
friends. The first
normal
time we were
doesn't mean bad, but they
the
are
first
a little
time
weird.
the first time we were on a flight together, I was his trainer, and we went into the back of the plane where there is like a little galley, and they have like a couple outlets people can plug stuff into. They have a microwave. Somebody had brought a crock pot of Swedish meatballs. I don't know. Um, and he was eating a plate of Swedish meatballs, and I was eating a plate of Swedish meatballs, and like one of them fell off of my fork as I had eaten like half of it onto the ground of this 50 to 60-year-old plane that does trust me. This plane, like we vacuum it, heavy air quotes, after every flight, but it is not clean. Fell onto the floor, definitely covered in piss, definitely covered in just like, decades and decades of piss. And he picked up this half a meatball and immediately shoved it in his mouth.
Mm.
And when I asked, like, what the fuck are you doing, man? He was just like, oh, I thought you were doing this to test me. So no, he
So,
wasn't normal,
what?
but he was very fun.
That's like if you ever hang out with like some seer guys or
Mm.
Green Berets and you dare them to eat bugs, they'll fucking do it.
They'll beg you to
Right.
dare them to eat bugs.
They will, like, your average Navy SEAL will get 3 beers deep and like either commit a crime or
Yeah.
eat bugs. It's going to be one
And
or the other.
if they're begging you to eat a bug, just let them do it. Because the alternative is they punch a guy in the face.
Yeah, you just let him eat the bug, and while he's eating the bug, you should escape.
You should leave. Because the next thing is going to be, I bet you don't. I bet you think I can't break a guy's nose in one go.
I bet you can. If you shot a bullet at me, I could punch it out of the air.
Basically. So either he's going to commit a homicide or you are, and either way, you want to get out of there.
Somebody's going to prison and somebody's going to the morgue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for talking oceans with me. Hopefully, we'll get you back on, get a little bit deeper into it. Maybe talk about happier things in the ocean. Some happy things are happening in the ocean, I imagine.
The ocean makes me happy. So,
There you go.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It was a good time.
All right, everybody. Thank you. You should be listening to Sarah's infrequent podcast, It Came from the Sea, and you should be following her on Twitter and her podcast, and give to her Patreon too. You got a Patreon, right?
I do have a Patreon.
Yeah, give Sarah your money.
Yeah.
What are you doing with it?
Nothing.
Exactly. Give her a couple bucks to talk about the ocean. It'll be great. Sarah, thank you, and everybody else. We'll talk to you next week.